Mercury series, How the Mind Learned to Protect Itself and Why This Matters. Most people don't struggle with communication because they're bad at it. They struggle because their mind learned how to communicate in a specific environment and then never got the chance to update that strategy. If you ever felt like you think too much, you struggle to say what you really mean, you freeze, over-explain, stay quiet, or replay conversations later, or you feel misunderstood when you're trying your best, there's a good chance that nothing is wrong with you, but your mind may simply be doing what it learned to do automatically. And that's what this Mercury series is really about. Because in astrology, Mercury doesn't describe how smart you are. It describes how your mind learned to protect itself. This is an idea I'll return to often because it's central to everything we're about to explore. Each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. This video is the foundation for a longer series where I'll explore Mercury through each of the 12 zodiac signs, not as a label, but, an active thing. And before we go any further, I want to say this clearly. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. Hi, I'm Natasha and welcome to Natasha's Creative Wellness, a space where I share my unique insights on astrology, psychology, and wellness as I continue my own life's journey of exposure therapy. For me, that meant unlearning, reshaping, and growing through small, intentional moments of discomfort rather than waiting until I felt perfect or comfortable with speaking. A lot of what I share here is shaped by my own lived experience and my natal chart. I have Chiron in Gemini in the 9th house, Saturn in Sagittarius in the 3rd, and Uranus in the 3rd house. So communicating, learning, teaching, and trusting my own voice hasn't always been easy or effortless for me. Go check out your Chiron and Saturn placements. Each video I make is part of that practice, choosing expression over silence, curiosity over perfection, and allowing my voice to evolve publicly. If you enjoy thoughtful, nuanced conversations around astrology and self-understanding, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who are looking for something deeper than surface-level explanations. And if you enjoy learning through storytelling, my book, Trigger to Change, is linked down below and pinned in the comment section. This video is the introduction to a series where I'll be exploring Mercury through each of the 12 zodiac signs. This is not a series about ranking intelligence. It's not about who speaks the best, learns the fastest, or explains things most clearly. It's a series about adaptation. Because Mercury isn't just how you talk when life is calm, it's how you think, interpret, and respond when life interrupts you. And this brings us to a core principle you'll hear repeatedly often. This is not about doing everything. This is about doing the right few things repeatedly when life interrupts you. Mercury shows us what those right few things are mentally and what your system defaults to under stress. Some basic Mercury themes are, at its basic level, Mercury governs reading, writing, speaking, listening, learning, processing information, making meaning out of situations or events, how we gather data, how we organize our thoughts, how we categorize experiences, how we interpret reality. Mercury is not just what you think, it's how meaning forms in your mind. Mercury also describes how you learn best, such as through repetition, direct experiences, logic and reasoning, observational learning, and feelings and emotional associations. None of these are superior. They're just different entry points into understanding. And once again, each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. Communication isn't a straight line. It's not, I say something and you receive it exactly what I meant. It's, I express something through my lens and you interpret it through yours. That interpretive gap, that space between expression and understanding is where Mercury lives. This is why Mercury is so deeply tied to misunderstandings. Not because people are careless, but because meaning is always filtered. Language itself isn't fixed. Words, definitions, and meanings have changed throughout history. Something we take as literal truth today may have meant something entirely different thousands of years ago. So sometimes we're not reacting to reality, we're reacting to an inherited definition. Mercury reminds us that meaning is contextual. Miscommunication doesn't always come from ignorance. Sometimes it comes from translation across time, culture, and experience. Mercury in mythology. In mythology, Mercury, or Hermes, was the messenger of the gods. But he wasn't just delivering messages. He moved freely between the divine realm, the human world, and the underworld. Hermes translated information between worlds that spoke completely different languages. He was also a guide, a negotiator, a trickster, and a translator. Hermes understood that context matters, tone matters, timing matters. Sometimes miscommunication isn't a mistake. It's the natural result of moving between worlds. Mercury as a psychological function. Psychologically, Mercury represents how your mind learned to work. Children aren't thinking, I'm developing a communication style. They're responding instinctively at a survival level. At that level, the questions sound more like, how do I stay connected so the people who feed and house me don't emotionally withdraw? How do I keep the adults around me calm and predictable? What parts of me are safe to express? How do I avoid becoming a problem, a burden, or invisible? Simplified even further, how do I stay fed? How do I stay housed? How do I stay protected? So when a child learns to speak quickly, stay quiet, over-explain, intellectualize feelings, observe instead of express, they are not developing a personality, they're solving a survival problem in real time. And this matters. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. Let's look into some Mercury patterns in childhood. For example, a child who is frequently interrupted may learn to speak quickly. A child corrected often may over-explain or self-edit. A child whose emotions aren't met may intellectualize their feelings. A child in chaos may become hyper-observant or quiet. A child praised for being smart may tie their worth to being correct. None of these are flaws, they are intelligent adaptations. Mercury forms in response to our caregivers, siblings, school environments, cultural expectations, even emotional safety or the lack of it. And once formed, these patterns don't tend to just disappear, they mature. Let's look at a real-life example, a sibling comparison. Imagine growing up with a sibling who is clearly gifted or a standout. You're gifted too, but differently. Quieter, less visible, less celebrated. And as a child, you don't think we have different strengths. You think, I'll never measure up. There's no room for me here. I can't compete with that. So your system adapts. You may pivot identities. You may stop trying. You may become the observer or the responsible one. This isn't because you failed necessarily, but because your nervous system learned where safety lived. May I repeat? Each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. Now, when it comes to healing, this is not about changing everything at once. It's not about fixing your entire personality. Many people approach healing like, I need to change everything about how I think. I need the perfect routine. I need to fix all my patterns first. That overwhelms the nervous system. What this really means is notice 1 or 2 habits that show up when you're tired, you're misunderstood, plans fall apart, emotions rise unexpectedly, and you feel it. These moments are where Mercury patterns activate. Mercury rules mental reflexes, habitual thinking, repetition, So Mercury doesn't change through insight alone. You have to apply action with repetition over time. It changes through practice in the real moments, the pop quizzes that life hands to you. Those are the moments where you can practice this change. My personal integration with movement and Mercury. If you've stayed with me this far into the video, thank you. I know this is not short form or surface level, and I truly appreciate your presence. Mercury also rules how we apply and integrate information. I've been a personal trainer since 2014, and if you're interested, my workout and fitness YouTube channel is linked down below. You can also follow me at Natasha Greenwood or fit_Tasha Flex. Movement helped me regulate, build habits, and transfer stress during uncomfortable life events, while still working through my own shortcomings. I lived by two of my own life's mottos after my father passed away when I was 19 years old from cancer. And during this transformative Pluto and Capricorn period, and I have a lot of Capricorn, like cardinal placements and semi-squares, I went through the mottos of life is harder than working out, and with every blow, I only get stronger. Again, nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. And with change and healing, it comes through repetition and not pressure, and applying those little lessons and awareness and practicing unlearning, unlearning and relearning over and over and over and over again through discomfort or tolerable discomfort, just like working out. Remember, your natal chart was imprinted before your conscious choice. It spoke in symbols before action even took place. Astrology helps us recognize karmic loops, inherited patterns, and where adaptations can become our gifts. What once protected you doesn't need to be erased. It can be reframed or refined. If you're interested in the intersection of communication, behavior change, movement, and long-term healing, comment "Healing Me Whole" down below. That lets me know when the timing is right to create something deeper and self-paced. You're also welcome to explore my playlist on Chiron, Saturn, and the North and South nodes. I personally find these very important for self-awareness at a deeper level. I'll leave you with the heart of this series. Each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. And when we truly understand that story at a deeper level, then our minds can even process within our bodies and our soul. We don't have to fight ourselves anymore. We can work with the mind and not against it. So thank you for listening, and the following will be the actual series through each of the zodiac signs. Thank you and goodbye. So if you have Mercury in Virgo or Mercury in the 6th house, this is going to be more for you. So the main kind of things to think about with Virgo energy, or when you combine that Mercury sign in the house of Virgo or the actual zodiac sign of Virgo, is very detail oriented, kind of like an analyzer, someone who likes to improve situations, people, systems, how to like nitpick on the small little fine details. That's like a foundation, so this way things work properly. Almost like OCD, and kind of like a fixer, someone who's a doer, who likes to fix, who likes to help. So I'm going to kind of, in order for me to kind of stay on task, I'm going to read off of notes. If you watched any of my past videos, I experiment a little bit in how I talk and present, and sometimes I can be a little bit too it's not direct enough. So I might lose people's interest. So some core psychological traits of Mercury and Virgo is their mind naturally scans for errors, inconsistencies, and inefficiencies. They notice what others miss, small changes, tone shifts, small patterns. things that are easily overlooked or not thought of. Virgo people or Mercury and Virgo may pick up these little fine details of what others miss or what other people might not think about, or miscommunications, how to improve something even better, come up with things, in order to solve a problem, makes things more efficient, or help people. That's kind of the initial or root, baseline of a Virgo energy. Is they can come off extremely critical, nitpicky, never uh, like happy enough. There's always something else that they could have done better, or something else that is wrong, or they messed up. Even if they did a really good job, or whoever else did a pretty good job, for whatever the situation is, they may find something to nitpick on. So always kind of be mindful if you have this placement, the tolerance level of whoever you're kind of around or communicating with, how you present your criticisms or self-improvement or improvement of other people, how you deliver that, what kind of words do you use, how often do you do it, because you can kind of repel people from being helped or wanting to help themselves. They're good problem solvers. Like instinctively, they feel most mentally secure when fixing, organizing, or optimizing something. Chaos can trigger anxiety for Virgo energy, almost like that's kind of like a control kind of thing for Virgo energy. If things do not go according to plan, or their checklist isn't kind of completed or in order, or they don't keep up with the little details that they need to keep up with, it just accumulates, it piles up, or it gets really messy, and then it's so overwhelming that they might freeze, and they don't know what to do, or so they feel so overwhelmed that they don't even know where to start because it's such a big mess. What is the best direction or thing to fix the problem now? So that kind of spins them down on this kind of negative cycle, or it can. Of course, look at your entire chart. You might have this one little Virgo placement and you have a lot of other very secure, stable placements where, this is not as prominent, So always look at everything else in your chart. You are not just one sign. You have all 12 zodiac signs in your birth chart, regardless if it's an empty house or not. You just have more energy going towards these planets, asteroids, whatever, within your chart. That's more of a focus for you within this lifetime of the cards that you were handed in this lifetime on Earth, of what to work with. Order creates calm. You have like internalized standards. I would have to say Virgo has very high standards. There's an internal metric for correctness. They have a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things because it's just better. Or they see the details and things to where, someone missed certain steps or whatever, they're gonna be like, why, or what's wrong with you, or why didn't you do this or that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's going to like bamboozle them or y'all. Thoughts are constantly refined, edited, evaluated. There's always something better, always something to nitpick on. Mental noise increases when things feel unfinished or messy. Like if you like said something to someone and it didn't come out right. A Virgo Mercury may constantly criticize over and over and over in their head of how they could have said something better, or what they should have said, but it didn't come out, or they couldn't put words into how they feel, or the best metaphor or the comeback that they wanted to say at the right time, at the perfect timing, and it just didn't come out. And then, there's a lot of ruminating thoughts, with this. So yeah, so a lot of self-criticism, maybe sleepless nights, if a situation happened to where, oh, you're like thinking like, I should have done this, I should have done that, I didn't do all these things right. Why did I make this decision? Why did I get into this contract or a relationship or whatever, and can really beat yourself up over it if it was a negative situation. Of course, it doesn't always have to be. Service oriented, Virgo is naturally ruled by the sixth house, or it rules the sixth house. So this is the house of daily tasks, your day-to-day routines. How do you kind of help one another? What do you do on a day-to-day basis to help yourself or help progress to the next level, or just keep the day going, get your oil change and the mundane stuff, or help wash the dishes, vacuum, things like that. Or it can be more serious, I don't know, surgery, an like firefighter, anything like that. Their mind asks, how can this be useful? It's a very practical earth sign. They gain meaning from helping, assisting, or improving systems or people. Their self-worth is often linked to usefulness. So if you feel like you are of no use, or you can't help other people, you feel like you don't have a purpose. So what's the point, of even being around? So like a lot of purpose of what you can do, what you can offer, what your role in the world is, to offer whatever talent, services, knowledge, whatever that is, to whomever. Could be just like your animals or whatever, the elderly or school children, or just little things that people may overlook, that is tied to your self-worth, self-esteem, self-value. How this thinking style may have developed, kind of like in adolescence, childhood. You may have had early exposure to disorder and unpredictability. Childhood may have involved emotional chaos, inconsistency, or instability. This does not mean that your parents were terrible or anything like that. It's just there wasn't as much order and structure and maybe consistency between two parents. Like maybe one parent, believed or said in one thing, and the other did a little bit of something else. And so you have two parent styles that are not like aligned or on the same page. And so you start noticing details in what each one does, what each one does not do. They do not communicate with each other to create consistency with you, or they just naturally are just not like that. There's nothing wrong, or, there could be, but, it doesn't have to look like toxic or anything like that. It's just, this is kind of how you get that kind of Virgo energy is, maybe a parent is like, you need to clean. I can't stand this mess or whatever. And they say those things, but then they don't keep up with their own mess, and they just leave things around. They never put things back where they belong. They just leave them out, and then it gets so overwhelming and messy and stuff that, they get busy and frazzled, or they're so tired after work and stuff, that they don't actually do what they say themselves. And so this kind of Virgo energy picks up on little things like that in their environment, whether it's the parents, the siblings, grandparents, whoever was living in your house, or like you had a ton of family or friends over or something, and just pick up on these kind of things that are inconsistency, and it gives you this kind of OCD-ish kind of way of observing and analyzing people, and kind of what they do and say and not do, and it doesn't make any sense, and how can you help structure things in a better way. The child learns to bring order internally when the environment lacks it. Attention to detail becomes a form of control. Adaptation through competence. They learn that being helpful earned approval, especially if parents or whatever, they're really tired, or there's something where maybe there's an illness, or you just feel bad for a parent. They work like 2-3 jobs just to eat, make ends meet. And so what can you do to help to just lighten the load off of one or both of them or whatever is going on? Because you just feel like, what can I do to, make things better, so you see that like empathy and things like that. Praise often came through performance or reliability. Like if you're very organized and structured, you kind of help. You're like you're an asset. You're not a liability, And so it's like, oh, thank God. Like, thank you so much for doing this for me, or, helping out. I didn't even think about it, and that makes you feel really good because it's something that someone didn't think about. It made their life easier or better. Like people who are struggling, or they just don't know, they don't have the capacity or the mental bandwidth, emotional bandwidth, or the intelligence in order to do something or complete something, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Those are things that a Virgo Mercury, or like a Virgo energy in general, can kind of take part in these type of things, in order to help and be of service. Let's see. The mind learned to self-monitor to avoid criticism. That can be maybe to others. Usually Virgos, are very hard and critical on themselves. They can be very hard and critical on others or people that they really care about and love, because they can't stand them maybe just like flatlining, or not progressing, or they're self-sabotaging, or they're doing something over and over again that they're complaining about, and you just want to help. So it can be critical, but Virgos, it's a very smart, intelligent sign. Well, probably, I would think, I don't have Mercury in Virgo. I have Mercury in Capricorn in the 4th house. But I would think y'all have a decent filter system to where, if it's not going to be of help, to someone, or if it's not necessary, how to keep your mouth shut. It's just not appropriate, or, it's going to harm. It's not going to help. So why bother? You don't know the person that well, or the situation, or whatever it is, in order to put your 2 cents in, because it can come off as rude, or you make it worse. You don't necessarily make it better. Let's see, learning that mistakes attract scrutiny. So like if you have a strict teacher, or in a high stakes situation like surgery, or life-threatening something, if you made a mistake, one tiny little mistake can mess up everything. Or in a Excel spreadsheet, when you're dealing with all these confusing numbers, you miss one, wrong number, and the entire equation is wrong, like math and all that stuff. Math, physics, engineering, space science, or whatever, building a bridge, all of those things. Like, you understand that you have to really pay attention to the details, because if you don't, it can create a big, big mess. And people can get hurt if that is involved. This reinforces, errors may have been pointed out more than successes. This creates even more strive and determination to be more perfect. When you got more negative scrutiny or criticisms, or all these things that, are like wrong with you, whatever, these negative things, there's more of this kind of psychological effect of wanting to be a little bit more perfect or more detail oriented of how you come off or all these things. This can be a cultural thing, like culturally accepted, like a lot of the kind of oriental eastern side of the world in various countries and various cultures. A lot of the mothers are very critical, and it can come off as really rude, mean, and harsh, in comparison to other cultures or Western cultures, to like how they discipline their daughters or criticize their appearance and things like that. And maybe very appalling to one cultural system, but to them is very normal, and it kind of propels the person to possibly try. It doesn't always work out that way, but to not be too relaxed and lazy and complacent. It's like you have to do something. You can't just sit there and it's okay to eat donuts all day, every day. It's not okay. Like, be fine with your body image or whatever. It's not healthy. It's just not good for you. No, I'm not going to say this is okay or whatever. And it's like, oh, they're going to point out things like your face looks really round. And so like, oh, what's going on? You look bigger than the last time I saw you, or you look a little too skinny, then, what happened, and those things could have been pointed out to you in order to kind of have this kind of Virgo Mercury happening in your brain, even though I mentioned in the other videos that your natal chart was imprinted on you when you came out of the womb, before any of these actual actions and behaviors happened, or surrounded you in order to create this effect, So I always find that the most fascinating to really point out to people if it doesn't really click. Especially if you're new to astrology. Let's see. That kind of errors being pointed out more than successes can reinforce vigilance and self-correction. Perfectionism develops as a defense system or a defense mechanism in order to not get that kind of criticism onto you. You become more perfect, whatever that looks like, in order to avoid and deflate negative responses towards you. So whenever you see someone out there in the real world and they have such a certain image or a look or this kind of overly done thing, whatever that is to you, that may come off extreme. They may have experienced in childhood a lot of negative things towards them, whether that came from parents, siblings, school bullies, whatever that is. Not everybody takes it in the way of moving towards perfectionism. Some people take it towards depression and kind of almost giving up, or alcohol and drugs and things like that, because they just don't believe that they can achieve whatever this kind of thing was put upon them. So you have various ways that people respond and behave towards kind of the same type of criticism bubble, but the child or teenager, or however, it can be an adult, who grows up through that, they navigate it in different ways. And so Virgo Mercury tends to navigate towards perfectionism or striving for better, correcting or self-correcting, things like that. Caregivers may have emphasized what needed fixing. So criticism again. Emotional reassurance, can't speak, may have been subtle or conditional. Assurance. The child internalizes criticism even when it's unspoken. Some internal things that if you haven't healed these wounds, I don't know how old you are, or if you already kind of overcame this stuff, or if you're still going through this kind of maybe the negative shadow side of an energy. Can be like, if I'm not useful, I'm a burden and nobody wants me, which is not true. Self-worth becomes tied to productivity, which it doesn't mean that if you're not productive that you're worthless. That's not true. But this is kind of like a belief system that you might have. I can't say that you definitely do. I don't know who you are. Rest may feel uncomfortable or undeserved, because Virgo always has a to-do list of some type, wants to be productive, wants to get tasks and things done, might relax later on in life or whatever you need to do. But if you feel like you have a lot to do, you're going to try and get stuff done, or be burdened by it because the list is too long. Self-acceptance feels conditional. Hyper-awareness of failure. They don't want to fail. It freaks them out, feels very depressing. The child becomes sensitive to mistakes, like if you make one tiny little mistake, you're like worthless, but it's not true. Shame can form around imperfection. Anxiety grows around getting it wrong, or not being good, not being a good little boy or little girl or whatever, like being sent to the principal's office is like petrifying, when opposed to another kid is like, yeah, whatever, go to the principal's office all the freaking time and whatever, they don't care. Virgo Mercury, Virgo energy is going to care, like they want to be good, come off as, the goody two shoes possibly, or, the prize student, or, the better child, the more helpful child, that gets more praise, there's that strive for it more so than the other signs. Some adult psychological patterns and struggles could be perfectionism and self-criticism, harsh inner dialogue, difficulty appreciating accomplishments, maybe compliments as well. Chronic feeling of not enough, overthinking and mental fatigue, mind struggles to shut off, obsession with details can crowd out big picture meaning. Very true. So don't forget that, even though you're focused on the fine print and the details of everything, and maybe you have tunnel vision, which is great for certain things, but don't forget to step back and look at the whole picture, because sometimes when you get too fixated, especially if you have other placements like Scorpio or the fixed signs, Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, Scorpio, you can get so fixated on one thing or one way of doing, or fighting for, something so much for so long, to where now you created a new problem that you didn't want either, so don't forget to step back. Just like I like to analyze, or like a metaphor, like painting a very large canvas. So sometimes, sure, you can zoom up onto one focused area of a painting, but if you spend so much time just on this one little area and not the whole thing, it's not going to blend very well. Or in order to get the other sections to match, maybe harder. So don't forget to, or like the proportions are going to look a little odd, because this proportion of whatever, the nose, looked right, but you got so fixated on that now what you wanted to fit on the entire canvas is, it's not going to fit, or it doesn't cover the entire space. It's like the plan that you wanted is not going to look the way that you wanted anymore. So you always have to, in painting, drawing large surfaces, if you do not have like some projector or whatever to like trace and, the little workarounds. If you don't have something like that, you always have to like zoom out. You have to walk far, far away. You have to go back in. You have to periodically do that. So don't forget to do that if you tend to have detailed tunnel vision, which is great in certain departments, depending on what you do, or what you care about doing. What else? Mind struggles to shut off. Obsession with details can crowd out big picture meaning, which is what we'd explained. Worry manifest as constant analysis. Difficulty receiving help. May feel safer doing things themselves because you kind of have more control. Otherwise, when people don't do things right or the way you want to do them, or do every little detail, they do it in a messy way. You're like, ugh, whatever, I need to just redo it. Let me just do it. Let me do it. I'm going to do it better. You're going to mess things up. And so they may feel more at ease doing things themselves rather than giving someone else the responsibility of something that they're like, I don't know if you'll do it right and you'll mess up my life. Or I'm going to have to redo it anyway, and that's going to be more work for me. So I might as well save time and let me just do it, So that can happen. Delegating can trigger anxiety. They may resent others for not meeting their standards. Self-neglect can happen. This is one of the workaholic signs. So don't forget to focus on yourself as well. Focus on service can eclipse personal needs. So try to find that balance. Burnout risk is very high. Emotional needs may be deprioritized, So just don't forget that, set aside your tasks for the day or priorities if they have a deadline or something that are more important. And some, if you don't get to, it's fine. It's not the end of the world, So things can be messy, You can, eat some bad stuff and, it's fine, unless you have some really sensitive or, high risk health problems where you really have to, not be so lenient on things like that. So yeah, try to find that balance for you if you struggle with it. Some negative expressions of Virgo Mercury, or the shadow expressions. There's always a positive and negative side to all of the zodiac signs. Okay. So these kind of negative traits can be chronic anxiety, nitpicking at others, control through correction, self-denial, guilt around resting, judgment disguised as helpfulness. So just be careful if you're actually projecting onto others. That can be actually some deep psychological thing about yourself that you are trying to control and get other people to do things the way you want them to do or behave, do whatever it is, in a certain standard of way of how you would do it or how they're supposed to be doing it. It can be projections. Maybe it's like, well, it's not fair that I know how to do everything perfect, or I do so much work. I know how to do everything right, and all of you people are terrible and lazy and you do everything wrong, because you need that ego or praise, or feeling appreciated, accepted. Maybe you feel overworked and you're taking on all that extra work because you feel like you do it better when nobody even asked you to do that extra work. So you may have built up resentment because you took on all this work because you want to help or you don't want to see things getting messed up or whatever. But then you're burnt out overworked and underpaid, and now everybody else around you is lazy and they don't know how to do anything because you didn't allow them a chance to get things wrong, to improve, to learn, have the time to make the mistakes, have the time to, you know, process things the way they need to process things, not the way you want them to process things. Not everybody learns, processes emotions, whatever, on your time, on your way. They have to do things on their way and allow them to progress. So if you keep taking that progression or how they can self-improve or figure out solutions and things, and you're just too quick and nitpicky, that puts them down. It makes them not want to try anymore. It makes them feel unhappy and like they suck at whatever they do and they might as well give up. So they're, just be careful if you tend to fall into that, whether you do that or not, I don't know. Or if you're doing that to your kid, your coworker, your friends, your spouse or whatever. Is it really worth it? Or do you need to tone it down a little bit? Because maybe it's not for you to control, because that sense of control is something about yourself that you don't trust. And so you have to think of everybody like adult babies. And sometimes they didn't get, the proper nurturing and time and, mentorship, or whatever, in order to do whatever you want them to do correctly. Even though, however you did it, maybe you got better nurturing, better tutors, your family had more money to do things like that for you. So you just learn more, or you just know more, or your childhood experiences kind of forced you to do it for many, 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 many years. And so those many years compounded, into the success or the knowledge that you do have. And other people, they didn't grow up with that. So I don't know. It really depends on what the situation is, but that is a thing that Virgos can kind of fall into. And it's really up to you if that is that detrimental or not. Is it necessary or not? Is that something about yourself that, something deeper that's going on that you feel the need to project that onto other people, if it is a negative thing. The higher expression of this Virgo and Mercury energy, or the positive sides, is like a very skilled healer and steward, able to improve systems with care and precision, notices what others overlook without judgment, creates stability and efficiency with compassion, self-compassionate mastery, learns that excellence doesn't require self-punishment, can rest without guilt, uses discernment instead of criticism, embodied wisdom, grounds intelligence in the body, honors rhythms and limits, like timing. Not everyone evolves, improves on the same linear time. It is non-linear. Just like working out, some people, it takes them like 10, 20 times longer than someone else to just get it or to improve or see improvement, but as long as you're consistent over time, there is going to be improvement. But some people, things don't click. Their mind and body just, they're not as coordinated, or, they don't get cues, and their body instantaneously responds to the cues given in order to do a movement. Some people they think in such compartmentalized parts in order to get their body to respond, and so it takes those people much longer, or they're afraid, all kinds of stuff. So people go on, improve at different times. And in their own way sometimes. Sometimes you have to back off in order for them to feel safe, in order to improve and to listen to your criticisms. But if you criticize, then they're just going to shut down, or they're going to build up resentment. They're going to rebel. They're going to tune you out, things like that. Honors rhythms and limits, models sustainable service. Some reframing of belief systems kind of in your mind. If you have like an old belief system of, if I relax, things will fall apart. You can think like rest allows you to be energized again for the next day, or not feel burnt out and hate your life or hate your job and want to quit and change careers or something like that. Or someone else can pick up the slack, or allowing someone else to pick up the slack because they would have gotten to it. It's just they had their things to do too, so they're not going to pick up the slack on your time. You got to give that time and patience for them to notice and do it, because that's not, whatever you prioritize might not be at the top of the list of their priority list. It's kind of there, but it's not at the very top like so that's an example. Another old belief system can be like, mistakes mean failure. It's like, no, learn from Aries. Mistakes help you learn. And then, they're so brave and courageous that they're willing to make 1,000 mistakes, and they learn so much from those mistakes and build such self-confidence, and they know it so well, because you learn sometimes the best from making mistakes. That is information of not only what to do, but what not to do, or how to do something better, or what I wish I could have done. So don't believe it's like, oh, I made a mistake, I suck. It's not like that. An old belief system can be, I must be useful to be loved, and instead say like, I am lovable without an output, like you don't have to be, productive or, helpful in order for people to just love your energy, love your personality, just being around, and you don't have to do a darn thing. You're just existing, and they love that, so yeah. Or another old belief system could have been, I should have done more, or reframe this as, what I did was enough. Like, you did your part. There are billions of people in the world, they can do their part too. You at least did something, and especially if you're capable. Some people are not capable, so they can't really do that much. If they're handicapped, blind, they're missing limbs, there's only so much they can do. You can say like, you did enough. Don't feel bad about it if, you can't do everything. You're not supposed to be an overgiver, an overdoer, burn your battery to the ground, otherwise people will leave you, or fire you or something like that. So don't think that way. Don't be lazy, but you don't need to feel that way. Some other things, let's see. Practical growth practices, practice self-talk without correction or correcting yourself. That's kind of like negative or like nitpicking you down. Leave small tasks unfinished on purpose. Just get your priorities done and learn to just be in your pajamas all day long, and you didn't do any of the dishes, you didn't do the laundry that you wanted to get done, and that's fine because it can wait, and you just wanted to watch Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that takes a very long time, or whatever, and it's fine. Just veg out for a minute. Schedule guilt-free rest, focus on progress, not perfection, accept help without micromanaging, engage in grounding body practices like yoga or meditation, deep breathing, calming yourself down, learning to not think about things to do, do nothing, stare into space. You know, just close your eyes and listen to music and just stare at the ceiling fan or something like that. It's very normal. So Mercury in Virgo is the mind that tries to keep the world safe by fixing it. So healing this comes from learning that being or existing is not a problem to solve. You know, like your existence, your meaning in life and purpose in life doesn't mean you have to be the fixer and try to correct everything like the teacher or something like that. Like, you are allowed to just exist and experience also, and not always be productive, you know, all the time. You know, as if like you're going to die. I mean, it depends on where you're living. Maybe you have to tend to the farm all day long, you know, and the cows and feeding the animals and all this stuff, and you're a one man or one woman team. I don't know, but you know, the odds are probably low, you know, or you have a group of people around to help. Okay. Ooh, sorry, I had to cough. But that concludes my Mercury in Virgo, Mercury in your 6th house video. Please check out my other videos in my playlist. It's organized in there if you don't want to scroll through far away. I highly recommend looking at your ascendant sign. I break down every single house in those videos, especially if you already know you do not have any duplications or intercepted houses. If you do, then you may have to watch the sign before or after your ascendant sign to kind of get idea of the ruler of the house that is duplicated. Or possibly intercepted, no, duplicated, to get a little better idea, because yours is going to be a little bit skewed. So ascendant sign is really important. And then your moon sign, those are short. I made those super short. And then your sun sign, that's going to be the most popular that everybody knows. But I blanked out. The other most important ones to also look at is your Chiron, or your wounded healer. That's one that usually hits home to most people who are going through situations and don't feel heard. So the zodiac sign and the house placement to get your kind of creative mix. And then your Saturn placement and your North Node placement, North-South node. Those are going to really kind of give you more of an idea of kind of what you're struggling with, what to improve, what to heal, what direction in life you are trying to head to feel more happy and fulfilled. That's the North Node. And kind of where you're coming from, what you kind of is common sense for you. So those are very, very important that I recommend everybody kind of learning more about. And the more you are self-aware, the more you can heal yourself and kind of accept things that you probably would like to reject about yourself, because we don't like to be told about our weak points or our negative traits, you know. But sometimes it's a good thing. It builds resilience. It makes you stronger. It kind of, once you're aware of it and you don't want to become like those negative traits, you know, and, you know, it allows you that time and space to be like, I don't like this about myself or whatever. And, you know, if you have a habit of doing whatever that is, or acting a certain way or responding a certain way, if you're aware of these things, you're more likely to catch yourself and be like, oh shit, you know, I did it again. And then you'll be able to practice this in an organic way when you mingle out there in the world, you know, because that's how real progress works, you know. It doesn't always happen online or one-to-one in a controlled setting. Life is not in a controlled setting. You also have to be self-accountable to an extent to make things work, make things change, make progress. You know, I live in America, and so we are the country that has the highest amount of research done, spent billions of dollars on research and all this stuff, but we have the highest rates of obesity and shorter lifespans and things like that. So more knowledge, more research, doesn't directly translate into behavior and action. You have to actually apply what you learn and apply what you hear or wherever you're getting your knowledge, podcast, reading, newspaper, whatever. You have to be able to filter out and weed out what is being manipulative or trying to lure you into one direction or one belief system, whatever that is, and you have to be somewhat self accountable. Or like, are you running away? Are you running away from being accountable for your part? Or you want like a shield in order to protect yourself so you can always be a victim, you don't have to actually do the work. Or you want so much money that you don't have to do the work. You can always outsource and pay other people to do things for you, which is like okay to an extent if you're able to do that. And it helps give people jobs, but if one day, poof, money doesn't exist anymore and everyone has to just fill that void in time with what they enjoy, or, suddenly people who don't enjoy cleaning up other people's messes or like being a janitor, garbage man, if they don't actually want to do those things, who's going to do those? If there's no money, there's no incentive to do those types of jobs that nobody wants to do. They have to feel like that's their purpose, and they want to help out or whatever it is. I'm going off on a tangent, but yes, self-awareness, self-healing. Check out my book that will be linked down below. That is an example of a personal experience and various experiences that you can learn through from storytelling, and it incorporates some astrology in there. Each chapter is a little bit different and it kind of bounces around. If you're more intellectual and you like more complex reading that you can learn a lot from, you might enjoy this more. Otherwise it might be too overwhelming for you. So yeah, check that out. Thank you so much for watching and making it this far. Please subscribe and like. It helps support this channel, and catch you later. Okay, bye.